Welcome back to Outriders. In this video we are going through basically some answers from the developers on how this game is going to work when it's fully released. I have picked these notes up from videos I've been watching, so we're going to jump straight into it. Remember to leave a like on the video if you do enjoy it, as it helps me out a lot. Sub to the channel, turn on notifications, and we are going to start with basically this game. You can adjust the world tier. A lot of you will know this, but if you don't know, just to quickly sum it up, you have a world tier, which is basically a progression system. The higher your world tier up to 15, it gets increasingly harder each one. So you can adjust the world tier, or you can play a particular build or class in this game, depending on what you feel like on a certain day. Sometimes you might really want to test yourself, and this is words from the developers. Sometimes you might want to test yourself, other times you may not want to. Outriders is going to accommodate to both the casual and the hardcore players. Next up, in terms of the auto scrap feature that a lot of people have been asking for, they've said the players should be deconstructing across their inventory and their stash, obviously when the game's fully released, and they're not too keen to automate too much of the process. So while there is a work in progress plan for auto scrap, they want to eventually decide with the community what the best decision for that is. Moving on to the cheating and the hacking of the game, they are working on fixing cheaters as a priority. They do want to punish cheaters who carry that attitude into multiplayer. So basically, they have said one of the penalties they are considering is not allowing cheaters into multiplayer. If they want to cheat in single player, then they can do that if they think it's fun. They just don't want those people to affect other players, which is perfectly understandable. Nobody should have a problem with that. Basically, if you want to just play single player on your account, then cheat as much as you want. But if you want to take that stuff into multiplayer, forget it. It's not going to happen. I think that is one of the best things I've heard from developers. Allowing people to have the fun they want to have in the single player, but don't take it over to multiplayer where it can affect other players playing the game. Then in the general sort of portion of all this info I've taken from several different videos, the system they have is prepared for adding new content in the future, obviously depending how the game's sales go. They are currently not considering PvP. In my opinion, that's a very good decision. They are aware of the importance of Twitch extensions and they're working on something, but it may not be there at launch and they can't promise anything. Seasonal events are something they would like to do, but once again they are awaiting launch reception just to see how well it does at launch. There is so much they could add and so many untold stories. There is no concern that the time-based rewards will limit the meta in expeditions. Creating builds, for those of you that don't know, expeditions is the endgame content. I believe there's 15 of them altogether, and it's going to be completely different maps. We'll get through it as we continue with the video, but creating builds and finding solutions is a really important pillar in the game, and there's definitely space for your own builds and theory crafting. They don't want there to be a strict meta. So for an example, if you look at the Division 2 Dark Zone, you've got Lady Death. If you look at a little while back in Warzone on Call of Duty, you had the DMR-14s and the DMASI dual wield. They don't want there to be a strict meta in the game. The time-based reward system in Expeditions doesn't define everything, it's not really strict. There is space for experimentation in creating builds and trialing them in post-campaign content. In playtesting, they found that there are many different ways to build characters that can combine. They don't intend for there to be one best build in the game, and your personal best build will depend on your own playstyle and who you are playing with. There is no proper way to play Outriders, and I think that's so good, because you can't just turn to a video and go, oh, this is the best build I've ever seen, this is the worst build I've ever seen, because it's all based on personal preference. People will get on with different builds differently. They will synergize with the people they play with. I love that so much about this game. The stash in the full game is going to be limited, and they've experimented with different numbers. Currently they are planning between 50 to 100 slots, and it's going to be shared between all characters, which is amazing to hear, because when I was playing Devastator to level up and get to character level 7 World Tier 5 in the demo, I was picking up weapons that had mods on them, or basically they had bonuses that could inflict ash on enemies or inflict burn, and obviously that would be best used with a pyromancer. So you can share things from your stash between all your characters, which I think is really, really good. Everyone is going to have their own instanced loot. They did try out shareable loot, but after balancing they found that individual loot per player works the best. This method encourages players to create their own builds, so this has its negatives and it's got its positives. I think it can be fairly bad. Like, say for an example, they change some of the loot system. In expeditions, there's bosses you can farm that only those bosses can drop a certain legendary. If there's a full group of 3 of you and you're farming that boss and there's one person that really needs that legendary to finish off the build they want, then if another player drops it, you can't share it amongst the group. Obviously, that's going to be really frustrating, but at the same time, I think it's pretty good in its own way, because it just means that you can't jump into a mission, someone's had the luck to get 2 legendaries in one run, and you can't just be carried through the loot experience, because they've said, we'll get into it, I think it's in my notes, I think they've said that there are a lot more legendaries in the game, like the full release. There'll be a lot more legendaries than what we've seen in the demo. So I like the fact that we're going to have to get them all for ourselves and not just be able to go into a game, someone's got loads of legendaries and they're like farming them, and they know like the best way to get loads to drop, so they can just drop them for you. As I said, negatives and positives to that one. They've stated that April 1st feels solid for their release date. From their point of view, there's no risk that it will not release in the short amount of time we have to wait now. It also says here, I can't remember where I saw this, but it says they're counting down the days until launch. There will be cross-save featured on the game, but it will be for basically cross-generation, so PS4 to PS5 for an example, and I think it'll work the same Xbox One to Series X. Cross-save across different platforms, so Series X over to PC, PC over to PS5. It's technically challenging and they're still working on it, although it may not happen. There will be some elements and mechanics in the expeditions, what we spoke about, the endgame content, that are not in the main campaign, but they're keeping that a surprise for now. At times you will need to think, what is the best way to tackle this? The new mechanics are not going to be completely different from the rest of the game, although there's possibly going to be like variation on some of the bosses, and as I said, they're going to be completely different maps and stuff in the expeditions, so there's a lot of stuff that we haven't seen from the demo that's going to be in the full release, which is really good. I'm glad they haven't shown us a huge portion of the game in the demo. If people want to stay with the game, they can begin looking into things that will make the player's life easier. They are super focused on listening to the game's community and building what they need. The creation of extra content and DLC will depend on the reception of the game, so basically the more copies they sell, the more of a chance we have of getting future content and DLC. If there is a large enough player base that wants it, they'll make it, because people can fly, love the game and the world they have built. The number of people in the demo so far is promising, but only time will tell. You can play the game solo, and your experience of the game will still be very good. The world tier system, which we spoke about, allows for this and is essentially the difficulty level. As a solo player with good equipment and a good build, you'll be able to finish the campaign. Post-campaign content is soloable, but it will be hard, especially reaching the last expedition. There are no hard limitations saying you must be in a team of 3 for any of the content in the game. Right now, balancing and creating for a party of 3 is their goal, and there is nothing planned for more players at the moment. So at least for the time being, we're stuck to 3-player groups. I've said this in live streams, part of it doesn't make sense because there are 4 character classes, but at the same time, I think it has its benefits as well. It must be easier for the developers, and not only that, if they do at any point in the future make another 2 character classes, then there'll be 6, so it'll make a little bit more sense. But not only that, I don't think it matters too much, because you can have 2 Devastators in a group, you can run 3 Tricksters, it doesn't really matter, because you don't have to all use a separate character class. And then moving on to theory crafting, there are lots of new things to experience in the full game, even beyond guns. They are super excited about the theory crafting people will be able to do using bigger and better mods. They decided to only show some legendaries in the demo, and they've also said congrats to the people who found all of them, but there are loads more as well as armor, and we've spoken about the armor on the channel before. They expect that when crafting becomes available, a lot of new options will become legitimate. There are plenty of items that might not be perfect, but after crafting can become really powerful. There's not going to be a loadout system at launch. They had planned for it to be part of the game, but right now they're electing to just make switching between builds as easy as possible without using the typical loadout system. Balancing the game is really tough because there's just so many different ways to build a character. They're able to balance on the fly, and they will definitely be observing the meta, buffing and nerfing if needs be. They fully intend to work with ambassadors and players to do this. They firmly believe this is a process they need to do with their players' input, so hopefully We see a couple of buffs, a couple of nerfs here and there, just to balance things out, but hopefully it doesn't go overboard, how other games have, like The Division 2, where there's been pretty much every single title update they ever did for that game. They were just constantly nerfing stuff that a lot of players found useful and easy to use. There will be matchmaking for the expeditions. The expeditions are 14 completely new maps. I don't know if there are 14 or 15 expeditions, but it's saying there are 14 completely new maps. Some will be in similar regions of the game world, so that there's basically going to be story and lore connections, but the maps themselves are completely different, and they are expedition-only maps. The voice chat and in-game chat, they're relying on platform solutions like Steam, Discord, Xbox Party Chat, PlayStation Party Chat, whatever it's called over there. There will not be any built-in in-game voice chat. There are discussions at the moment about in-game chat and in-game leaderboards, although there are no immediate plans. They want to tackle the most outstanding issues and requests first, and then see what they could do potentially in the future. Controllers will be supported on PC. There's going to be aim assist for users that are using controller but not to an intrusive level, and if you don't like it, you can disable it as well. Then onto the replayability, the endgame and the solo play. They want to give players places in the full game where they can find the best items, build the best builds, while experiencing a challenge and having fun. For the devs, replayability is the core principle of the genre. Players also have the possibility of repeating the campaign and expeditions. There are no plans for something like a horde mode at launch, but who knows what will come down the line, and it's said, wherever I read this, to stay tuned. I think a horde mode would actually be quite decent in Outriders, although, as it says, we'll have to see. Progress through the game is down to the personal player, how well you understand the game and the strength of your build. The very end of the game, the Eye of the Storm, will be really challenging if you're a solo player, and your build will need to be perfect to do it by yourself. So it's possible, but it's going to be incredibly tough. I've said in a couple of videos that you need to focus on how you want to build your character, whether you're going anomaly power, firepower, max health for like a tanky build. I don't think hybrids are going to cut it on this game. I don't think you're going to be able to run 2 pieces of gear, firepower, 1 max health and 2 anomaly power. I think you're going to have to pretty much min-max and fully spec into certain things, although you might be able to hybrid between anomaly power and max health, or max health and firepower. We're going to have to see in the full game, but I don't think like a 3-way hybrid is going to work out. Our inventory is limited by slots per equipment piece. For an example, I think your primary and secondary you can have like 30, each piece of like armor you can have 15 in your inventory. If you are running out of inventory space, you need to scrap items. However, there's enough slots that you're not going to be doing loads of inventory management. They experimented with an unlimited pool, but people weren't scrapping things for resources, they were just hoarding stuff instead. And there is going to be a vault that will be accessible in hubs. And then the final notes, some epic variants of guns have randomized modifications which can impact the appearance of the gun. The more unique the gun, the more art and gunplay are connected. The importance of cover entirely depends on the character you are building. You might create a character that avoids cover entirely, or create one that's very reliant on cover. Playing aggressively will be really rewarding for some classes, although for others, with a different approach, it may be wiser to use cover more often. It will all be down to personal playstyle, and Outriders will accommodate both. So when they've said that cover is for cowards, it's basically trying to tell people that it's not just specifically a cover looter-shooter, like a cover-based looter-shooter like The Division 2. It's not a cover-based game like Gears of War. You can choose whether to play relying on cover or barely using it at all. Classes like the Trickster, the Devastator, they're for close range combat. The Trickster has a skill that lets you teleport behind enemies, but it all depends on your build, and as I've said in previous videos, if you are very low on your health, you might have to get behind cover. I do it with all different classes, because if I get below, if I get down to like 5 HP, there's a thing in the game, like most of your health regeneration will come from killing enemies and using skills and stuff, but like a third of your health will come back automatically just for not getting hit. So use cover every now and then, or what I like to do is use cover every now and then, just so that I can get that auto health regen, and then I can start using my skills and guns to build that health back up to full. But that was like an in-depth video on like expeditions, endgame, playing solo and in groups. There was loads of different things we covered. And that is going to wrap this video up. So let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments. I will see you in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope it helps you out.